We talked about a lot of introduction topics until now. So now we are going to go into more specific things around the different components and key concepts of Azure OpenAI. So as I said, Azure OpenAI is a set of pre-built AI, generative AI models, and they provide customization capabilities. Like if you want to fine tune the model, you can go ahead and fine tune the model with your own data. It has got built-in tools to detect and mitigate harmful use cases so that users can implement AI responsibly within their organizations. It also supports enterprise-grade security with role-based access control and private networks. And that's another reason why we encourage or Microsoft encourages people to use the large language models hosted with Azure OpenAI service. Okay, so let us quickly look at some of the key concepts of the generative AI models or the OpenAI service. So we are going to talk about some of these key concepts. So they are the prompts and completions, and then we are going to look at tokens, what they are, and then resources, and then deployments, prompt engineering, as well as the word models, what they are. So let us get started with the prompts and completions. So the completions endpoint, this is the core component of the OpenAI service. So this particular one actually provides access to the model's text in, text out interface. So basically the user need to just provide an input prompt, which is basically asking a question, and then it is going to provide a response. So that's how it really works. So it's all about user asking the right questions and they are going to get a response in there. The next part is your text tokens, or what we call it as tokens. So the Azure OpenAI service, what it does is it basically processes text by breaking that into what we call it as tokens. Tokens are nothing but it can be either words or just a chunks of characters. So suppose if I have a word called hamburger. So hamburger, I can break that into ham, burger. Each one of them is considered as tokens. So similarly, every time when you send a string or a question or what we call it as a prompt, it is going to be chunked that into tokens and you will be able to get to see that like, okay, it will calculate how many number of tokens is there in the sentence and which is what is going to be used. The reason the tokens are important to understand because sometimes your model will have limitations on how many tokens it can process. So this will be the combination of your input, output and any request parameters that you provide. And also the quantity of the tokens will also affect your response latency and throughput for your model. So that's why understanding about your tokens is really important. So similarly, we saw in the previous slide about text tokens. We also have what we call it as image tokens because sometimes in a chat conversation, you can upload an image. So when you upload an image, instead of typing a question, there is tokens calculated for the image also. So for instance, like low resolution mode image may have a different set of tokens than a high resolution mode image. So this is something that you need to consider. So if you are going to just make sure if you're going to load detailed image, then basically the API is going to return faster responses. But if you're sending a high resolution image, then probably the API has to do a little bit more work, and that is going to be a little bit of a latency issue, as you can think like. So in this example, like what you are getting to see is if it is a low resolution image, then it will cost 85 tokens each, whereas high resolution image, the token cost is calculated by a series of scaling steps. And similarly, like the image size, the cost is fixed 85 tokens. The cost for a high resolution image, when you provide for different sizes, it is going to apply a calculation in order to get the number of tokens in. So as you can see, whether it's a text-based question or an image that you're uploading, first thing is it is the OpenAI services calculate the number of tokens, and then it is going to use that for the costing purposes. Resources and deployment. As I told you, right, like Azure OpenAI service is like any other Azure resource. So you can go to the Azure portal and you can go ahead and provision them without any issues. So let us quickly look at what does it really mean. So what I'm going to do here is just to quickly showcase to you the Azure Marketplace. So this is the Azure Marketplace. So here, like any other resource, I can go and search for Azure OpenAI. And now I can just choose the Azure OpenAI service and I can go ahead and provision this. So here I can go and click on create and I can start filling the details and provision it. So this is an important thing. So as you can see here, this is what I call it as a resource. So like any other resources on Azure, Azure OpenAI service is also a resource which I can go ahead and provision here. So once you create a resource in Azure OpenAI service, the first and foremost step is to create a deployment. Deployment is nothing but you take an instance of GPT-4 model or the foundational model in your own subscription. So for instance, I can go and say, okay, I want to create my own instance of a GPT-4 model, which I have to use in my projects. In order to do that, the first step I will be doing is to create a deployment. Create a deployment is nothing but you choose the foundational model and you provide a name. That's what you will be doing. So let us look at some examples of that, right? So here is the Azure OpenAI Studio. So I have already provisioned this particular service. So this is the Azure OpenAI service. So as you can see here, there is a deployments section in here. So here I have already got a couple of deployments done. So I'm going to create a new deployment. So here, this is the first step you need to do, right? So I will choose a base or a foundational model, and I'm going to go for a GPT-3.5 Turbo, and I'll just to give us name for that. So this is actually a copy of the model is going to be in my instance. And then I'll say create. So as you can see here, I have now successfully created my GPT-3.5 Turbo model. So I will leave this for 5 minutes because normally when you create a deployment, leave the deployment for 5 minutes, and then after 5 minutes, you can start using the deployment. So now I can use this deployment in after 5 minutes, and I can ask questions pointing to this, and it is going to provide me responses. And this is what we call it as a deployment. You create a deploy instance of the model, whatever type you want, whether it's a GPT-3.5, GPT-4, and then you can kickstart your questions around asking the API calls. So let us quickly look at a demo on how do we create the resource, right? So what I'm going to do is a simple thing. I have got an OpenAI service. So let me quickly get that in here. So this is my Azure OpenAI resource group. So I have quite a few OpenAI services in different regions. So I'm going to create one in Sweden Central. Okay. So let me go ahead and create and look for Azure OpenAI. Now I can click on create. So here I'm going to go and say, let me do that in Sweden Central. So this is the Azure OpenAI Studio in Sweden Central, and I'm going to give a standard one. So just go on next. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and create this. So this is as simple as it in terms of how to create a new Azure OpenAI service. So after you create this, you will be launching the OpenAI Studio, and then you will be going ahead and creating a deployment of the model that you want to use. That is as simple as that. So it doesn't take much time at all. It will quickly create the OpenAI service. Once it creates the OpenAI service successfully, I'll be able to showcase it to you in terms of like how you launch your Azure OpenAI Studio, and then how you can go ahead and create your deployment. So that deployment, like you can take any of the foundational models, like we saw, right? GPT-4 model or GPT-3.5 model, doesn't matter. You can go ahead and create the deployment. So let us go to this newly created resource. So as you can see here, straight away it says that you want to go to the Azure OpenAI Studio. I'm going to open it in a new tab. So now this is opening my Azure OpenAI Studio interface. And here I should be able to create a new deployment. And as I said, every time when you create a new deployment of a foundational model, just wait for 5 minutes. And because if you try to use it before the 5 minute interval, it will just throw an error to say the model is not ready yet. So just wait for 5 minutes. So always just keep that in mind. So if I go to deployments here, I can go ahead and create a new deployment. So here I can go and create a GPT-4, choose the GPT-4 foundational model and give a GPT-4 my instance as a name. And now I can go ahead and create it. So now within my Azure OpenAI service, my GPT-4, my instance deployment has been created. As I said, I always give 5 minutes time before I use it. So this is how you'll be going ahead and provisioning an Azure OpenAI service and launch the Azure OpenAI Studio. And the first step of the process is basically creating a new deployment of a foundational model. Great. So now we have seen how to provision an open AI service and how to use things. Now I'm going to talk about prompt engineering. Of course, there is set of sessions that we will be discussing in tomorrow around what prompt engineering and why it is really important and what are some of the prompt engineering techniques that you will be applying. But in today's session, we are going to just do a quick introduction to what prompt engineering is all about. So prompt engineering is nothing about prompt is all about the question that we ask the large language model. So in Copilot, if you look at it, I ask the question to say, generate a job description for a business intelligence developer. And that is basically a question that I'm asking the large language model. And the question is basically is the prompt. So how to write a good prompt is actually you will get it through to practice. So a lot of people think I don't know how to write good prompts. And so Is there a way of how to learn writing good prompts? Yes, by practice. So the more prompts that you ask questions and ask practice it, then you will be able to write better prompts to get the right response that you are looking for. So there are three main approaches that you can take when you are doing prompt engineering. Sometimes, like when you're asking a question, you don't need to provide any examples. Like the job description question that I asked, right? I don't need to give a job description example in here because job description is a universal word and the OpenAI model understands what I'm talking about. But there are some scenarios where if you are asking a specific question where you want a response in a specific way, then you need to convey that to the model with the help of examples. And there are can apply either one shot example, which is basically providing only one example, or you can provide what we call it as a few shot example, which is several examples that you can use. So let us look at this with quick demo, right? So what I'm going to do here is I am going to just showcase the new model that we created, and I'm going to go to the completions API in here. So here we have only got GPT-4 models, right? So this time I'm going to create a new deployment and I'm going to put a GPT-3.5 Turbo instruct, and I'll give a GPT-3.5 Turbo instruct my instance model, and I'm going to create it. As I said, every model that you create, you have to leave for 5 minutes so that you can start using the model. So I'm going to give another 5 minutes. And during that time, I'll showcase a few other concepts and then we'll look at together in our demo. Okay, so here we are going to look at a list of all the different models that are available as part of the Azure OpenAI. So what we are getting to see here is the list of models that are available. So we have the GPT-4 model, which is the latest available models. Normally, like because the GPT-4 models has got high demand access. So if you need access to this model, you will be able to put a request and you will be able to get the access to the model. And similarly, Azure OpenAI service by default is not enabled in everyone's subscriptions. So there is a form that you have to fill and to have Azure OpenAI available in your subscriptions. And if you are an existing customer who already have OpenAI subscription, but you don't have the GPT-4 models, then again, there is another form you have to fill in to get access to the GPT-4 models. GPT 3.5 is again a latest set of model, but it is not as latest as GPT-4. So I'll give you a bit of a history about the GPT models. So initially, when OpenAI created the large language models, they had separate model for text-based questions and code-based questions. So if you want to ask a text-based questions, you will ask that. If you want to ask it to write code, you will be asking the code-based models for that. With the GPT-3, what they have done is OpenAI have merged them into a single model. So whether you are asking it to generate content or whether you are asking it to write code, now you can use a single base model. So 3.5 is basically an enhanced version of 3. And key things that has been enhanced is the model is now trained, latency issues have been reduced, and another part which is what we call it as hallucinations. So you would be hearing this word hallucinations in a lot of discussions when we talk about OpenAI. So hallucination is nothing but the randomness that you can see in the responses that are provided by the large language models. So you ask a question and typical like any human being, the large language model will attempt to provide an answer. And sometimes like if it doesn't know, it can randomly provide some responses. So I think the GPT-3.5 try to reduce hallucinations. GPT-4 is a much more highly performant model. Again, it also provides both text and code based support, and the hallucinations are furthermore reduced in GPT-4. I won't say like the hallucinations are completely eliminated. It has been improvised. So every new model that is coming out, the hallucinations are getting reduced. So then you have the embedding series, which I told you, like if you want to convert text into vectors, we use the embedding series. And tomorrow we have, as part of tomorrow's session, post prompt engineering, we are going to talk about what the embedding models are and what it can provide outcome for customers. DALI models, they are used to generate images from text prompts. And then you have Whisper model. So you upload an audio file, it is going to provide you a transcript. Last but not the least, like if none of these more out of the box models are providing you the information what you are looking for, then probably you can go ahead and fine tune those models and using your own data and use it. So I think given we have been going through this, let us quickly see whether we can try and use our deployments. So I'm going to go to the completions API. And so now you can see there is my GPT-3.5 Turbo instruct model. So I'm going to go ahead and say classify text. So in this example, what you're seeing here is like this is an example where we are applying what we call it as the few shot example. So So we talked about few shots, right? Where we will give one shot and a few shot. This is an example for one shot. So where we are asking to classify the following news headline into one of the following categories, and we define the categories in here. Either classify that news headline into business, tech, politics, sport, or entertainment. So the headline one is actually Donna Stephenson is cooking up a new kind of perfection. The internet's most beloved cooking guru has a buzzy new book and a fresh new perspective. And we have already categorized that under the entertainment section. Then now we are giving another headline, and this time I didn't put the category. I'm expecting OpenAI model to fill the category. So let me go ahead and hit on generate and see what is the response I'm getting. As you can see, now it has categorized the headline to business. So how does it know like it has to provide the category as business? Because we said this is the category list that you should be using. And also I gave an example. So it knows exactly the category should be the name out of this list. And this is where you can either use a single shot or a few short examples. And that is going to help the model to learn exactly what is the response that you are looking for. So pretty cool, right? And this is the key thing that you get. And similarly, you can do a lot of things like if you want to generate a job description. So here I want a job description for the title of business intelligence analyst. And now in the prompt, I have provided some additional information where looking for the main responsibilities of the role, list of the required qualifications, like other benefits like flexible working hours and other know how to apply. So now if I go ahead and ask it to generate a job description, this model is going to go ahead and do that. So I want to talk about a couple of things in this particular playground. So if you notice under the playground, so as you can see, the job description is complete. So it has got the position review overview, the key responsibilities, the qualifications, unique benefits, and also like how to apply for the role. So now I don't need to do much, right? I can take this job description, customize it wherever I need to, and then send it to my HR team, and my job is simplified. Otherwise, I have to spend time writing the information about this particular job description. Okay, so there is another concept which I wanted to talk about before I get away from this particular screen. So if you notice on the left hand side under playground, I have got two sets of playgrounds here. I will come to DALI and assistance a bit later, but I have chat as well as completions playground. So I'm currently in completions playground. So the completion playground, they basically use text in and text out. You ask a question and it is going to provide a response. And this particular interface, the text in text out is being used historically. But since we had GPT-4 models, now the GPT-4 models, they use the chat-based interface. So let me quickly show you what does the chat-based interface look like. So here, if you look at with all of the chat-based interface, so I'll choose a simple example here, like I'm going to say an Xbox Assistant example. So basically, what you are getting to see here is it with a chat-based interface. It's not just you ask a question, it is going to give you an answer. It is a little bit just better or greater than that. So here we are looking at things around the Xbox customer support agent is basically the example where we have set the system message. So system message is nothing but setting the context for this chat interface. Basically telling the end user saying this is going to be an Xbox customer support agent whose primary goal is to help the users with issues that they are experiencing with their Xbox devices, and saying this particular chat is friendly and concise, and it is going to provide only factual answers to queries and doesn't provide answers that are not related to Xbox. And if you notice, it also gives some examples. So this is one example it gives. Like if the user asks a question like, how much is a PS5? The assistant is going to respond to say, I apologize, I don't have information about the prices of other gaming devices such as PS5. My primary focus is to assist with issues regarding Xbox devices. So as you can see here, this is how the GPT-4 models work. It is using a chat interface. So no longer we use the completions API, we use the chat completions API, which will take three inputs, like out of which you have the system message. Then when it comes to examples, each example should have a user message and a assistant message. And you can have n number of examples as we discussed. So now if I ask a question here, my Xbox is not turning on and I am not sure what to do. So if I ask this question to basically say my Xbox is not turning on and I'm not sure what to do. So now this is now going to act as an Xbox assistant and it is going to provide me a response. As you can see here, it says, I'm sorry to hear that you are having a trouble with your Xbox. Here are the few steps to try. It is asking me to check the power supply, do a hard reset, or sometimes it is good to try a different power outlet. So try any one of these things or even check whether it has been overheated, or If none of these steps work and if your Xbox is not turning on, then probably you can just set up a repair through the Xbox support website. So here, typically it acts as an Xbox assistant and it is actually helping me in order to provide answers for my question. So what you noticed here, in chat completions API, I need to just ask one question and that's it. So in the completions API, but in the chat completions, I have to provide the system message. I have to provide the user and assistant message for every example. You may be wondering why they moved from a text in, text out to a chat based interface. The reason for that is nothing but in a text in, text out interface, you ask a question, you give an answer, the context is finished. And then the next time when you ask the question, the model doesn't know anything about the previous question that you have asked. But with the chat interface, until the chat is continuing, the context is still maintained. So the model has an idea about what are you discussing in here. So it can tailor the answer accordingly rather than pretending that it doesn't have any context of what the previous question that you have asked for. And that is the advantage of using the chat completions API. So that's something I wanted to discuss before we jump on to the next topic. Of course, we saw the DALI, right? So you can use the DALI model. It will allow you to generate images on the fly. So I have a quick example for you to show about DALI 3. So this is a DALI 3 deployment that I have already got. So here I can say a watercolor painting of the Auckland Sky Tower. So now I'm asking it to give me a watercolor painting of the Auckland Sky Tower. So this is using the DALI 3 model. So DALI 3 model is mainly used to generate images on the fly. It's not that it is going to search in like your like a Bing search, a Google search to get that. Instead, it is generating the image on the fly based on the natural language text or the prompt that you have provided. So you can provide any type of description like that. So here I have just said, give me a watercolor painting of the Auckland Sky Tower. It gave me. Now I can even ask totally something different. So show me image of an astronaut. So I can just fix it. Astronaut driving a car and eating an apple. So I can just pretty much I can just give any prompt and it is going to generate based on the description that I have provided as part of my prompt. So here I have just asked for an image of an astronaut driving a car as well as eating an apple. So as you can see here, that's the image it generated. So I don't know how the astronaut is going to eat the car with that helmet, but still that's the point is here, whatever textual description you give, it is going to generate the image on the fly for that. And that's what DALI can offer and where it is really useful. So just to give you some examples, right? I write blogs every day. So when I write my blogs, sometimes I need some images for my blogs. So now I can come and generate my images here on the fly and use it in my blogs. Or if you're writing like fictional content, and sometimes those fictional content requires some images, there is a great opportunity here to come and provide a description of what you require, and then it will generate the image for you. So DALI has got great opportunities in terms of the type of images that it can generate. I would definitely recommend you to try that. And this is something that you will be practicing with your hands-on labs. So just play with some of the natural language prompts and see how good images can be generated using this model.